live.
Welcome everyone to the Pentucket Regional School Committee business meeting of March 2nd, or I'd like to call it. Roll call vote, Wayne Adams.
Yeah.
Okay. Emily Dwyer.
Here.
Can you guys hear me okay?
No.
Just barely.
So much.
Okay. Marie Falzani. Here. Dick Hodges.
Here.
Chris Markins.
Here.
Lisa O'Connor.
Here.
Chris Redding.
Here.
And Nina Trotta here, and Joanna will be here. All right. I would like to get a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Okay, Wayne?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily? Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sorry. Lisa O'Connor?
Yes.
Chris Redding?
Yes.
Yes. Could I please have a motion to approve the minutes for business meeting on February 9th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Wayne Adams?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Chris Martin?
Yes.
Lisa O'Connor?
Yes.
Chris Redding?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, could I please have a motion to accept and file the correspondences from last week?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
So somebody who sent something recently questioned why it wasn't in there, so maybe you just make a statement about when this is prepared, it's all the correspondence up through that time, and anything after that will be in the next agenda.
Okay, yes, that is correct. Correspondences, we have the agenda meetings and what we have received up until we post, or until we're done, is it?
Until it's posted.
Until it's posted, we include them in, but anything that comes in after it's been posted is not included until the next week. So, so that's that.
Thank you.
Yep. So roll call, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Could I get a subcommittee update for the finance committee, please?
So we're going to be going through, we had a meeting this morning in preparation for tonight's meeting, and we'll be going through what Greg went through with us later on in the meeting.
Great. Teaching, learning, and accountability.
We have not met, but we will be meeting probably in the next month. So I will have a date for everybody soon
Great.
and an agenda.
Great, thank you. Policy.
We met Friday and went through the facilities policies, and there's some policies tonight for everyone to take home and look over for the next year. And we'll meet again next Friday.
Bylaws, we have not met yet, so there is no update. Superintendent's evaluation, Chris.
So we met yesterday and we finalized the evaluation criteria that we have chosen from the superintendent evaluation rubric. So the items that correspond to Dr. Bartholomew's goals, and the proposed timeline for that is to hand them out for the next meeting, to bring them back, or to have people turn them in for the first meeting in April so that we can present them at the last meeting in April, so that we do that before there may be turnover in the school committee. So I just talked with Dr. B, and he thinks that timeline will be okay. The concern would be that the kind of examples or documentation that he would need to provide us that go along with the evaluation, is that enough time for him to pull it together? But he thinks he can do it.
Sure.
So.
Thank you. And communications.
We haven't had a meeting. We have one 16th, or I don't know, mid-March sometime.
Okay. And now we have public comments. And first we have Charlotte Cantone.
Okay, Ms. Cantone, you're on and you're live.
Good evening, school committee members. My name is Charlotte Cantone and I live in Groveland. I'd like to start by saying I'm happy to see that there's now an advisory board. I do want to emphasize advisory, as that's all it is, advisory. You school committee still have to make the motion and the vote to open schools. One of my concerns are that there's no student advocate on that board. I'm concerned about some of the advisory board members' relationship with other members of this process. However, I'm not here today to talk about the advisory board. I'm here to answer a question that Dr. B asked in the meeting on February 9th. His question was, how do you ethically fill as many seats in school as possible? How do you ethically decide who gets to go and who doesn't? The answer to that question is simple. You can't. There is nothing ethical in what's going on right now. It's not ethical to punish students' futures the way we are doing. It's not ethical to impact their mental well-being the way we're doing. It's not ethical to impact their futures with such magnitude. It's not ethical to have the cure be worse than the disease. It's not ethical to prioritize children based on who their parents are. It's not ethical for IEPs and 504s not to have full access to school. It's not ethical to have students suffer for over a year and still not have a date and plan for them to be back in school where they belong. It's not ethical to sit here meeting after meeting and stress 6 feet when, as far as I can find, none of our local Board of Health has mandated that in any meeting. There are no minutes I can find where Board of Health had stated 6 feet and 6 feet only for schools. DESE and Department of Public Health jointly put out a memo on August 20th, clearly stating 3 feet is acceptable. Nothing in this mess is ethical, and the only way out of this mess is to open schools. I encourage you to put a motion forward tonight to open all elementary schools on March 15 and middle and high school on March 21st. To be able to move forward, you have to have a goal. Right now, there is no clear goal. You as the school committee need to let Dr. B know what you expect of him, so he in turn can go to his principals and give them a task and let them know what he expects from them. The principals can then plan with their staff and reach out to their community with what they need to meet the goal. Because we, as a community, are here to help. But without the school committee setting a goal and a deadline, we can't help. Without the goal and a deadline, we are moving nowhere. And that's definitely not ethical. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cantone.
Thank you. Next up, we have Christine Kent. Please state where you're from and where you live.
Ms. Kent, you are live.
Okay, I'm Christine Kent and I live in Groveland. Good evening, committee members and administration. I want to first thank you for your volunteerism and commitment to the community, and I value the amount of time and hard work that goes into such a charge, especially in these unique times. I also want to recognize and applaud the creation of the 100% Pentucket initiative. I hope this working group will alleviate conflicting messages and help move us in a positive direction. In that regard, in order to further clear some confusion, I respectfully ask that the committee would invite Dr. B to provide specific documentation he has received from local boards of health that are restricting 6-foot distancing. I have yet to locate a statute, bylaw, or other regulatory decree that allocates that precise authority to our local boards of health. Nevertheless, a restriction to operate solely at 6 feet distancing would presumably be considered a deliberation under the open meeting law of Massachusetts. Yet I cannot locate a single public record that shows this deliberation occurred, when it occurred, or what the findings were. So I urge the committee to call on Dr. B to provide this documentation. If these boards did not issue that restriction, then they have merely acted in an advisory capacity. And while the committee should certainly regard their advice, the committee is not bound to that recommendation. Furthermore, if this opinion was provided when we first returned to school, I would urge those boards to revisit this advice as the available data grows by the hour. I've heard various administrators discuss what is the best way to ascertain who has the greatest need to return to more in-person learning. No teacher or assessment is going to tell you that. But do you know who can? Their parents. And what we are telling you is that they all have the greatest need. It is time to do what is equitable and return these children to the in-person learning fully. My kindergartner has asked why half of his class can attend school for 4 to 5 days, but he can only attend 2. How do you explain to a 5-year-old why he has not been chosen to be one of those invited back? I urge you to please consider making a motion to move to a full in-person learning plan for Pentucket and to do so in a swift manner. I understand that we cannot flip a switch, but we do need to move in a vigorous fashion. The children have lost so much time, and they are continuing to lose more each day. I can't help but be reminded of the discussion of whether to keep April vacation last year or to work through it remotely. Dr. B held such a high esteem for the value of in-person learning that he kept reminding all of us that if we kept vacation, or even just a part of it, that would preserve more opportunity for in-person learning if we were able to return to the classroom. I urge you to value every minute of in-person learning that we can salvage for this school year in that same respect. I fully support the option for full remote families to choose what is best for their children. Please give families like mine the opportunity to choose what we need for ours. Thank you again for your time and for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
Thank you. Right, and now we are on to superintendent news and student rep news.
All right, Madam Chair, I will turn it over at this time to our student rep, Ms. Casey Peterson. Casey, you are up.
Hi. Since we just met last week, I actually don't have much of anything new to report, but what I can say is that with the exception of football, which did experience a minor setback, Fall 2 sports are now in their second week, and athletes are managing the COVID-related modifications well. It's great to see students on campus after school, getting some exercise and being part of a team. Anything that brings us one step closer to what we remember as normal is welcome at this point. Students are really trying to be thoughtful about social distancing and keeping their personal friend bubbles small to limit exposure and prevent the spread, because we all want the opportunity to come together in person again for school and other events soon. Hopefully, we will see many of our teachers and staff get vaccinated soon to provide another layer of protection and confidence for those of us in the school community. I also know that a lot of students are cautiously optimistic after hearing the plan to work towards bringing students back full-time in the coming months. And as I stated last week, we are beginning to see hope for a more normal end to the school year. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Casey. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Casey.
Yeah, and it's similar. So similar along those lines, Madam Chair. I have a few items to talk about today. I know Mr. Conway's going to be talking about one of those, but so at last meeting, I had mentioned we were going to try to get get this school committee in person, and we just had those. The question went into the Board of Health as whether or not we could do that, because there seems to be conflicting about what doesn't count as school. And of course, at the same time, we had that new advisory come out from the Department of Public Health regarding March 1st is when things opened up yesterday. And then March 22nd is actually the date when we'll be able to come back and have in-person meetings of 10 or more people. But for the time being, even we are restricted to just 10 people. And as Doc, you're counted just like I
I
am.
know.
Yeah. So we're restricted to 10 people. So I just wanted to put that out there. So we're not going to be trying to get anybody at the next meeting live here in person, but potentially in April. Of course, this morning, the second bit of news was just ongoing. If you live in Merrimack, if the power was coming on, it was going off, it was coming on, it was going off. The trees down on Church Street in Merrimack, Church Street in West Newbury, affected power all over. We started having issues, I think right around 4 o'clock, and they continued going on. I think the biggest impact was we did get all the children into school. We get the power up and came back on. Merrimack Municipal Light Department did a fabulous job getting power on. Worked with the police department, fire department to get information out, and once that was on, we were able to get all the children to school. So if their power went out, they didn't even notice. But at about 9:40, 9:45 today, tree went down on Church Street and took out the power and consequently the heat at Sweetser. So fortunately, everyone obviously was okay. The teachers were awesome. Administrators there were awesome. They did an excellent job communicating, just letting everybody get everybody looped in. Mr. Lebrecht did a fabulous job. Mr. Conway went over to help out at Sweetser, and we were able to get all the children either got picked up at Sweetser or they got moved over to Donahue. We were able to get some buses over there to just move them over to someplace where it was warm. The concern, of course, we gave it about an hour and a half, but the concern, of course, was with no heat. That building was the temperatures where they are, they just going to cool off quickly, and even if it came back on, it's going to take time to warm up. So, just want to thank everybody that was involved in that. Again, not an easy situation. Even when I was coming back roads, I think there's a road 110 to Amesbury was closed off. So there's trees down all over. And then the last bit of news, I wanted to turn over to Mr. Conway just to give an update on one of our big topics that we're trying to tackle is a program review in middle school and high school in terms of curriculum. So go ahead, Mr. Conway.
Sure. I think some committee members, at least in subcommittee, have heard us discuss this. We, as a district, are beginning a process of a middle school, high school programming review. That's going to take about a full calendar year from now until next year at this time. The timing of it's important because it's all in preparation to move into a new building with the middle school and high school together. So there's lots of components that will be part of that. Looking at schedule, looking at programming, looking at graduation requirements, all those types of things. But really it starts with some focus groups, and it starts with a process called developing a vision of a graduate. And that is the process that will begin this spring. We'll start this month, actually, in March, with focus groups with staff, and then we'll move into focus groups for parents and also for middle school and high school students. Some of them could be facilitated in person because they're small groups. Focus groups by nature are small, and then some could potentially be done virtually as well. So we're sort of announcing that tonight, that we'll begin that process in the next couple of weeks. People will begin to hear and see some emails requesting an invitation or who is interested in doing so. We're going to seek to have a diverse group of people be involved. We have some of our staff members who are enrolled in the leadership program, a CAGS leadership program at Salem State, which is a co-sponsored program with us in Salem State, along with Newburyport and Triton. They're going to help facilitate some of these as part of their leadership work. And then the building leadership will be participating rather than facilitating. So it should be a good start to it. There's more to come. We'll give you more information as we go. But those are the first steps. And then there's a couple more phases that will come in throughout the next 9 to 12 months.
Anyone have any questions? Chris?
So you slightly touched upon it. So when they're looking for people interested in participating, will it be like a general email sent out to all parents?
So I think initially there'll be a general invitation to see who's interested. And at first they're going to start with staff, and then they'll do parents and students. But it'll be a general email seeking people who are interested. They should put their name in if they're interested, if they want to participate. What's involved? A fair amount of time, probably at least one session that will be at least 90 minutes, and maybe an additional follow-up session for another 60 minutes. all in the course of this spring. So, and then from that though, we'll have to whittle it down. We can't run focus groups with 100 people, so we have to whittle it down and try to make sure we have various components of representation as well included. So.
And then the next steps beyond the focus groups, you'll update us.
Yeah, so we'll update you. I mean, part of it is developing that vision of the graduate, and that is gathering that information. At the same time, it's gathering information beyond just a vision around what are the things we're doing pretty well, and what are some things that we can look to maybe potentially improve. Taking all that information and combining it with what the vision of the graduate is, and seeing administratively from that lens, are we prepared from an infrastructure, from a schedule, from a program standpoint, all of those things, are we prepared to realize and actualize that vision of the graduate? And taking all that information and feedback in together, that's sort of over the summer, and then into the fall is really building in a lot of the action plans to ensure that as we move into that new building, that anything that really needs to be done in preparation for that be done. And part of it is a process to begin to think about what does that mean to be together in one building as well.
Final thing. So I'm wondering whether there was any consideration given to talking to some recent graduates, because I think that in some cases they would have a very good view of the things that they wish they had at Pentucket, the things that they had at Pentucket that they're like, yeah, that really didn't transfer over. You know, I think they'd have, certain ones of them would have a very powerful insight into that. So I don't know if that's been given any.
Yeah, so that's fairly typical of a program review. When you look at, that's one of the protocols is to have recent graduates contribute, be it a survey or via focus groups.
Right. Yep. I think that would be helpful.
I think overall, our biggest thing is we want to make sure, not just because, one, we're going into a new building, but also when we look back at the last decade, there's been a lot of ebbs and flows and adjustments and things done. And I think we just want to make sure we have a clear path that represents what the community's expectations are. I know what my expectations are as a alumnus over here. So I want to make sure that we capture all of what the community is looking to do. And I think that will give us great purpose, great direction on how we're going to move forward with a lot of our curriculum, in particular, outside of the standard core courses, what other things we might offer. And Madam Chair, that is what I have.
Okay. Does anyone else have? Emily? You're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, I had it on full screen and I couldn't find the unmute button. Can I make my disclosure statement before we move on to new business?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I was going to bring it all up later on.
Oh, okay. Nope. I'll wait till then. That's fine. I just didn't, when I'd asked before, I thought you guys said right after this stuff. So it's fine. I'll wait.
We'll do it during C.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so now on to new business. We have, so in your packet, you have a bunch of policies that the committee, the subcommittee has submitted to you. We recommend that you read through them and reach out to Mrs. Baldani with any questions or comments you have. And then the policies will be on the March 16th meeting for adoption. So go through all the policies. If you have little, grammatical or, small changes, then, reach out to Marie. And, if there are other, really questions about the actual policy, I would say, wait for March 16th to discuss if you want, or ask the questions beforehand. Is that good, Marie?
Yeah, I mean, if there's big questions, we have a subcommittee meeting next Friday. People are welcome to come to as well. That's always an option.
Okay.
A week from.
A week from this Friday.
Chris?
So the concern with that, if more than 3 people come, then it becomes a quorum of the school committee. So I think that's perhaps, if you have a 4th person there at the meetings, I think it becomes no longer a subcommittee meeting or something. I'm not quite sure.
I think we need 5.
Yeah,
Five.
So,
Five for a
I don't think
quorum.
it's a weighted quorum.
But still, I think we have to be cognizant of that. So do you want them emails or just reach out to you and try to find a time to talk?
Yeah, either way, whatever people are looking to do.
We have not run out of room for our subcommittee meetings, I'll say that.
It's very true. We have a big wood shop.
Okay, now, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Some people have suggested the agenda and, we think it should be voted on, whether or not to do it or not. I mean, it really just would be minutes, the agenda, and correspondence. So is there any discussion? Chris?
So I kind of did a search for the consent agendas, and pretty much everybody around us except for Amesbury uses them. And what they could be used for is minutes. So any like business meeting minutes and also any subcommittee meeting minutes. The correspondence would be on there. And in addition to that, we haven't had it recently, but donations, any large donations that, like any of that information could be on there. So I think in some meetings, it would save us a couple minutes. In some meetings, it might save us like 10 minutes or something like that. But I think the rest of the committees who use it well to just kind of, information that needs to be made public that we need to approve, but there really isn't necessarily any discussion related to it.
Okay.
And it wouldn't prevent discussion if somebody wanted
Right,
to have discussion.
and the thing is if there is something that needs to be discussed, you just kind of pull it out and vote on it regularly.
And so just a question, Chris. So with the consent agenda, then is there a motion to accept everything in the consent agenda?
Yeah, so you'd say motion to approve everything listed on the consent agenda.
Okay.
So certainly when we're doing roll call through Zoom, that could save a lot of time.
Yeah.
In normal circumstances where we can do it without roll call, just by hand, it wouldn't be as much. But
Marie?
So I appreciate the idea behind it, but I'm just concerned, like, I was concerned and I asked that we vote on it because as a school committee, I think, and we learned in training, if we're gonna change the way we do anything, I think it should be voted on.
oh yeah, I don't.
So when I heard it was automatically being changed, I said, well, did we decide on that as a group? Did we vote? So that was why I asked for it to be voted on. And then two, I think it's great to save time and whatnot, but I also I think we have to be more, all of us individually have to be more cognizant of the Robert's rules as well, because I think that takes up a lot of our meetings too. And if the public is coming at us saying that the meetings are too long to watch, and I know there's members amongst us that say they're too long, and I just think individually, all 9 of us have a responsibility as well to, in addition to the consent agenda, also be mindful of Robert's rules.
Chris?
So I think when I made this suggestion, it was when the bylaws were being presented, and it was a question as to whether the bylaws was going to change. So when I brought this up, it was not to automatically adopt it. I think it was I would help the bylaws group to kind of research and look into that. So that was never my intention to change it without everybody kind of agreeing to it. But, I've been on boards where they do use it and it does streamline things nicely. And there may be other things that we find that could be put in it as well.
Dick, Lisa, Emily, Wayne, does anyone have any opinions, thoughts? Yeah, Wayne? You're on mute.
I like Marie's ideas. I go along with her thoughts. I'm not way one way or the other. Most of the committee believe is extremely helpful in streamlining things. We should go that way, but Chris just told us to make the difference of a few minutes or possibly 10 minutes. I'm not sure that's a super help. So what's up?
Yeah, I feel like it could shave off time during remote meetings, but if we're gonna start doing being live, doing the meetings, we'll be the raising the hands and going around. Does someone want, Joanna?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Wayne?
No.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
No.
Chris Markins?
Yes.
Lisa O'Connor?
She muted.
Oh, you're muted.
I apologize. I'm going to abstain because I don't care either way.
Okay. Chris Ready?
Yes.
And Dina Trotta? Yes, that's fine. Okay, next on the agenda is our COVID number update and commissioner's plan.
Yeah, before we get into this, Ms. Dwyer, do you want to make that disclosure now?
All right, so I had asked Dina and Dr. B for a second to make a disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest, at which the people at the Mass Ethics Commission had recommended that my husband and I both make, actually, so he'll be making that, I don't think to you, but to a bunch of other people. So because he was appointed to head the task force to create the milestones and parameters for more or all students to return to in-person learning, I just wanted to make it clear to everyone that that is something that like he and I are both going into this knowing, and I don't feel as though it impacts my decision in terms of improper influence or undue favoritism, because they're, you know, that task force is going to be potentially making recommendations to us. And that, while I obviously take his, you know, his opinion as valuable to me, I'm not worried that he will influence me because I have a brain in my head and I use it. So I'm not worried that that's gonna, I get to make my own vote and he doesn't like influence that. So I'll be filing the papers with Marianne tomorrow, and if anybody has anything to say, they may.
Thanks, Emily.
Never doubted you.
So the reason why I said this is we're going to get to some information very shortly. I wanted to go over, obviously the numbers, things like that we've discussed in the past. But when we look at the town numbers, so it's interesting if you look at this past week, Groveland, remember those big numbers? They're now in the gray. So Groveland's just exponentially gone in down direction, and that is fabulous. West Newbury went up one tick mark, and now they're in the green. And again, Merrimack just dropped out one. We've done this before, where you can go on and you can see this is Groveland, this is what their percent positivity is, and there was nothing at Bagnell, so 0 there, and in the high school, there was 4 cases, which is just 0.53%. And that's pretty consistent regardless of where I go to on West Newbury. It's at 0% of Page, and at Merrimack, actually had 2 cases at Sweetser and 1 at Donahue. So there are percentages there, but again, way below the standard numbers. The other part that we typically look at is the COVID dashboard. For some reason, I don't have that up right now. But if you go on and take a look at it, I can tell you that we've had in the last 2 weeks, so last week and this week, we've had a big increase. Well, relative to what it had been the prior 6 weeks, we've had an increase in high school in particular. And I think that was something that we all reasonably expected, right? We all knew that was going to be something that we could be prepared to see. And just to give you those numbers right now, we have, today's Tuesday, so it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we have 5 positive cases, 3 in the high school, 1 in the middle school, and then 1 over at Page. And last week, to finish out the week, we had 7. So when you try to figure out what is that, so those numbers are the highest, they're the highest they've been since January 23rd, the week of January 23rd. Just recall, before anybody goes to panic mode, that we were up to 22 the week of January 2nd. So very much expected. I think we can reasonably expect that we're going to see some more coming up, like this Thursday when the numbers come out, that we higher is what the expectation is. But if they don't go up high, that's bad news. Just great news. And also, in addition to that, we had that survey going. You can see we've had 1,005 individuals who have completed this. This is a survey that we sent out on Friday to elementary parents, because what we need data, right? So we can do the distance in the classrooms, what we can do at 3, 4, 5 feet, we have all that. But what we need to know is if we go down to 3 feet. So if that's something that's decided, the commissioner's supposed to come out this Friday and come out with this plan and potentially change or request regulations to be shifted. And if that happens, we need to know how many people are going to fill those seats and how many people are not. And how strongly do they feel those? So how confident are they that that's what's going to happen? So the survey was pretty simple. The school that they attended, you can see it was a pretty even distribution based on the size of the school. Bagnell is the biggest school, followed by Merrimack and then Page. And at 1,000, just for a frame of reference, at 1,005 surveys being filled out, that's almost, and we're above 90% of people that completed this. So that's excellent. This is
You're saying 90% of unique families, basically?
Say it again.
90% of families?
Yeah, 90% of elementary families. Yeah.
Well, but some families would have done it twice for 5 students.
Yes. So if you have 3 kids, they're elementary, we actually fill it out 3 times. And you can see the breakup. That's because we have so many filled out. It's exactly what you would expect to see. So the first question: if the commissioner's plan is approved and public health measures from 3 feet, 3-foot distance is schools is safe, and we're able to drop down 3 feet between students, would you send your children or child or children to full in-person school? And that's the goal, right? That's everybody 3 feet, everybody in. And you can see 88.8% said yes, and 11.2% said no. And if you want to know what the number is, there it is right there. 112 people said no, and then you have 892 said yes. So that's great. I mean, that gives you an overview of what how the community feels. So the next question is, how strongly do you feel about it? I mean, are you wavering? And that answer right there is they feel very strongly. So overwhelming 74.7% feel strongly. Only 15 folks did not feel super strong one way or the other. So that's the community saying with conviction, yeah, we feel good about that. And what you can't decipher from this, what matters, is you can't decipher, is that a no or a yes? Because it doesn't matter, because there's so many that are in the 5. That most are 3/4 are strong. And then this last question. So if you're in the know that you're not going to send your child to school, how likely are you to request that your child go to full remote for the remainder of the year? I'll put a commentary on this. It's interesting. The commissioner and his comments was saying they wanted to get rid of hybrid because it's not as valuable as in person. We all agree with that. But at the same time, he wants to keep remote. So that's puzzling in a lot of different ways. But I'm sure he has his reasons. But here, the 5 that's 95. So that's 95 people who said, if you go to 3 feet, we're staying home. Now, what I can't tell you tonight, because we haven't sat down to go through and do this. Again, this just went out on Friday, and we need time to go through and look at who these 95 people are. What we can tell you tonight is, are those 95 people already remote? Or are they people who are filling seats and are going to go remote if we drop down to 3 feet? But I think that was just, don't think. We put this out there because this is the data we need. And it gives us an idea of how to prepare when things change. So that was that part. The last thing I just wanted to make mention of was, so we had I know Emily is why I just mentioned this, but we had started last Wednesday, when our meeting, whether we meet with the health agents, we had a lot of conversations just about how do we get everybody get on the same page. And as a result of that, we were fortunate we had John Guilfoyle, Public Relations. They work with all 3 towns. and they also work with us in different capacities, but it's just, just getting information out. And it sounds like, I mean, from my perspective, and certainly I think from some people we've heard from, we're doing a lot of work, but there's just not a lot of information going on about what's happening. And it doesn't happen because we don't have people to write about it. We are ourselves having to put that information out. But John Guilfoyle just brought up, and everyone agreed, the health agents, and I thought it was a fabulous idea, that we put together this task force, 100% Pentucket returning to school safely. And that task force is comprised of each health agent, a school committee member from each town. You have the team leader, who is chief provider. You also have the lead school nurse. You have an elementary teacher, and the district physician. So, and Mr. LeBrecq, the finance director. They're all part of this. I'm on it as well. But they're all part of this program. And the purpose of it tonight and right now, a part of that group is meeting to talk about exactly what we've been like, the distance part. Like what are the routes in consultation with their regional department of public health. So schools that are dropping out, what is the rationale? How are they doing that? And what distances are safe? Because that's the question we need to have answered in order for us to move forward. So I don't know if I'll open this up to, I know that Chairwoman Trotta, Mr. Markins, they are both on it, as is Mr. Hodges. So I don't know if any of you want to talk about, we had our first meeting was on Monday. There's another meeting on Thursday. And after each meeting, I think Mr. Guilfoyle, they're just going to be putting out press releases just to keep the community informed about what it is that's happening at these meetings. So do any of you want to speak about?
Well, I think it's a great group we put together, or you put together, and it answers a lot of people's questions. Like, we are all working together to get everybody back in school. We're working with the health agents. It's not solely we want the kids to be in school. There's no doubt. But we also have to go with what the local health agents are allowing us to do. And instead of kind of back and forthing, we're all meeting together, and we're going to work together and hopefully do it, way sooner than later. So, we're meeting twice a week, and I think people will be really happy with what we come up with. How about you, Chris?
I'm always careful to predict how happy anybody's going to be about anything.
Can you ask them if they can hear? Just because people complained last week that, and it might be because you're sitting in front or us or whatever. Some people couldn't hear very well. So I don't know if Emily or.
Can you guys all hear okay?
I'm hearing fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I guess echo Dina's thoughts. My sense right out of the gate was everybody is very much on the same page, that we all want the kids back. And more importantly, we want to do it quickly. And I think the way the superintendent and his team have put this together makes a lot of sense, because I think it saves us basically time on the back end, right? If we're all doing this together now, it means we don't, and the superintendent's team don't have to do a whole lot of work to plan something that may run into any roadblocks from, again, dealing with 3 different agencies in 3 different towns. So putting everybody in one place at the same time twice a week, so that we know we're all moving forward on the same page, it should save us a lot of time, get us where we all want to go fairly quickly, I hope.
Thanks, Chris. Do you want to add anything, Dick, or are you good?
I'll ask this question right now, and if I don't get an answer, I'll ask it again tomorrow at our meeting. The Groveland Town Hall is locked. I would love to get in and have a chit chat with our health department, but there's no possible way. So do we even know what the Groveland Health Department thinks about any of this?
Yeah, so they have, Rosemary Deasy is the health agent from Groveland. She'd been there before. She came back in January. That was a position that was vacant for a little bit. We've been working with Claire, who did a great job filling, just with the contact tracing as much as especially put the short amount of time she had. So yeah, Rose is at those meetings, she's part of it, and she's contributing to it both there and we still have our Wednesday meetings where they're letting me know what their numbers look like in the town and who's being impacted by them. I mean, I think what I heard, I would agree with what I heard Chris and Dina say. It seemed like everybody was relatively on the same page in terms of what the objectives were and how we were going to get there. So I think we'll find out more on Thursday. And as my understanding is it's there's only so many groups that can meet right now, or I guess they can meet remotely, but in person. So
Right.
not really my place to say why the door is locked in Groveland. I think that's the case probably in most municipalities. But they certainly involved.
Well, my second concern is regarding the commissioner. When he's talking about educational issues, he really has my ear. But this situation that we're involved with involves some medical issues, and that's when he no longer has my ear. I read enough Emerson and Thoreau that maybe we're due for a little civil disobedience as we think about going from 6 feet to 3 feet. And I'm just planting that seed. I'm not making a motion. I'm just planting that seed as a thought that as we think about that eventually, and I've heard more than one parent say when and this is pretty compelling for me anyway, and the cure is worse than the disease, we need to seek out a different direction. And I'll leave you with that thought.
Thanks, Dick. Okay, Marie.
Can we ask you a
Yes,
question?
do you have any questions, Marie?
So I have two quick questions. You said there was an elementary school teacher.
Yes.
Is this task force also tackling the middle school, high school?
So right now we're doing the elementary because that's what the commission laid out, was the kindergarten through 5th grade. So that's where we're starting.
But it is called 100% Pentucket.
Yeah,
So I
right.
assume
So
it's
that's why I was
somewhere.
questioning.
Right, so the idea, a big part of the idea is not only just to go through and have these conversations, line things up so when it happens, it can happen as quickly as possible, but also to do visuals. So as you're filling in, you're like, I don't know what Guilfoyle is going to come up with, but you can see the progress as it's happening. I think we all know, we had conversations, I believe we had some conversations about how in middle school they are on teams, so there's potential opportunity. And with the principals, we've definitely had numerous conversations about how they might be able to troubleshoot, because if you have a student that comes in, like you added a student in the middle school or high school, they have 7 periods. Not all 7 periods are going to have an opportunity. If there's a seat vacant, there might be 2 or 3 where they're not. So it's a matter of finding a space for them to go those periods where they cannot go into the class, but they might be able to go somewhere else in the building where they can stream live, but still be in the building and have those interactions. But that's something that's actually stuff we're working on right now. I know I have a high schooler, middle schooler, and an elementary schooler, and middle school and high schooler have told me they have people are getting added into their classes. And I looked at them and I said, good,
Yeah.
great.
Mine would look the same.
Yeah.
But is the elementary teacher there for the union purposes? Or?
Well, I think
That
it's,
is correct.
yes, but also we need the perspective.
Right.
It's because like anything else, what's gonna happen on this is when we have everybody together, when we develop a plan, when a plan comes up and finalized, they can walk through with us, they can tell us, here's a pitfall, here's a mistake, here's something that's missing. So we can make that correction quickly instead of moving forward and then getting pulled back into, now we have to change everything else. Yeah, I mean, I think she said she's not speaking on behalf of the union, but just from a teacher's perspective, which is what we certainly need.
Joanna, you had a question?
Yeah, I actually have 3. Okay, so my first is, I don't agree that the task force should be either you or the business manager position. I feel like it should be superintendent or assistant superintendent or perhaps principal, just because I feel like that person should be more representing educational aspects. So that's my opinion.
Yep, so the reason why it was Mr. Bragg or myself was because at this point in time, I think we're all laying down a whole bunch of things, which Conway absolutely is. We're trying to cover up some shift over at Bagnell. He's having to go over to Bagnell. He's working on a lot of testing literacy programs. And not that Mr. LeBrecq or I are not, but we're both listed on there. If one of us can't get there, the other one's there, but he and I can collaborate between the two. I understand, it's just,
Yeah, I just feel like Greg has a lot to do with our budget right now, so
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's-
prefer the superintendent, assistant superintendent, or perhaps the principal after that.
Not that you didn't appreciate it.
No, you know, well, partly too, our schedules are like done 3, 4, 5 months in advance, if you look at, and this is new. So meeting, like the Thursday meeting, I won't be going to that. I already had 2 other things scheduled. So, I mean, that's kind of why it wasn't more. I'm really only there in case they need money.
They're having to
Say no.
So
Well, if you
already,
get a tent or something, if it comes
I
up.
think to that point already, there were things that came up at the next
Yeah.
morning, we had solutions for them from a financial standpoint about what we'd be able to do. But it's, I mean, if you picked any of those people, everyone's gonna have some kind of conflict.
Okay. My second point is, and we might already be doing this, and like the task force to just be aware of like how many students right now are being left out of a grade. So like say the kindergarten, say Paige has everybody in place, say maybe Sweetser kindergarten has all but 2, and Bagnell kindergarten has maybe all but 3, and the distance would have to be reduced from 6 feet to maybe 5.75 feet. I'd like to think that maybe that could
Just make
that transition. So I just want to make sure every grade's being looked at individually, especially at the younger levels.
We haven't gotten to that detail because we're waiting to hear the principals have to finish filling spots first before we know exactly what that number is. But we definitely went over, each classroom is very different, even within a building, it's very different. In this building here in the middle school, 11 is the limiting factor in all the science rooms at 6 feet. So when Mr. Cohen is going to add students in here, it becomes a problem. Like when it comes to science class, there's only 11 is his limiting factor that he can get in a group. And again, that just means in the other classrooms, if it's 14, he can do 14. There's just 3 students are going to have to come and go to the alternate place. But yes, they definitely are aware of that. And the distance, like you said, I think even at Page, when we go over the numbers, I might have mentioned this last meeting, if you drop down to 4 feet at Page, if everyone was there, 4 feet gets everybody in at Page. 5 feet gets just about everybody in. So it's, it definitely varies.
Okay, and then the last thing, this is, I think, a little bit more for the future, perhaps for the task forces. I would like them to still consider the necessity of, or whether it's necessary to have testing, some type of pool testing. And the reason I say this is my concern. When we go into the fall, perhaps many of the adults will be vaccinated. Many of the children will not be vaccinated. And the school, I don't think, can mandate a vaccine until we get into emergency use, out of emergency use authorization, which could be quite a while. So this is my question to the health agents. My understanding is right now, a lot of the kids who are finding out that they have COVID because their parents perhaps are testing positive, so that they're being tested. And that's why we're discovering the infection. Now, when we start getting into a scenario where the adults aren't actually getting it, the primary spread could end up being at the youth level. And I don't want to be caught in a situation in the fall where the state's going to come down and say, hey, you need to know how to trace COVID in your school system because there's going to be a lot, perhaps, of asymptomatic spread. And I don't want us to have to shut down because now we don't have a testing plan in place. So my concerns might be completely invalid, but it's something I've been a little concerned about because of the rate of asymptomatic spread we have at the college level. I assume it'll be just as bad at the youth level, or if the adults aren't being tested as regularly because they're being vaccinated. Something to consider.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm curious to see, I have to believe, we've seen this at the colleges in particular, where testing is such a very key part of students being able to come back in person, and sometimes to even come outside of their dorm rooms. I'm curious to see while the state decides to move on this, they extended the pool testing April 8th? So I think it might have been April 8th or somewhere around there. They extended the pool testing until that point. And there's scenarios we just heard about, Mr. Conway. I'm trying to think where you need to tell me this, but there's testing that was done in one school district. They have 30% of their students, their parents did not sign them up to this, so they were not part of the pool testing. A student who was not part of pool testing saying exactly what you said, family tested positive, student tested positive, and there was somewhat of a small spread. So yeah, without it being mandated, it's tough. I think I'm very curious to see where they roll out with this. I think more importantly, I think we went over these numbers, I think, once before. So we have, I think everybody knows, Pentucket has the Binax now in place, and we can use it. We think someone might be a positive, we can go and swap. Pool testing, there ended up being the financial cost, even though the state pays for all the hardware, it's the personnel issues that we run into. You need to have not just the person logging the data and doing the testing, but you need to have also someone who's overseeing that entire program. That's obviously a challenge for us, and those personnel costs we had. But it would seem to make sense that they would just say, we'll cover this.
Yeah, but it's just, if the task force considers it perhaps a position that the three towns could fund as opposed to the school district.
So I think that's another, we haven't talked about this in the meeting, but it is that part about you're bringing a pool testing to here when it's really, it's a clinical, it's a clinical thing. Why are we doing that inside of a school building when testing could be something that's done at, I don't know, in a town hall or
Sponsored
some
by
other
the
building
town, yeah.
that's around? And why are we running it together? So yeah, I'll absolutely bring that up.
Thank you.
Chris?
So I did not receive one of the surveys because I don't have an elementary student, so I didn't actually see it. But I did have a parent question. I don't know if it was clear or not on the survey that when you're considering a reduction from 6 feet, that you're not talking about lunches or any times when students. So I think that I question whether that 11% was like, yeah, I don't want my kid in the cafeteria at 3 feet. So I don't know if that was there.
I think it said classroom. The question specifically
So I
said
didn't say in the
classroom.
message, I did not put in the message that for mass breaks, for lunch, that the standard, as far as we go, would still be 6 feet with maxed off. And I had a handful of emails that came in about that, and I responded 6 feet would still be required at lunch.
Or any snacks or whatever.
Yeah, and again, that survey is going to give us a lot of good data on space. But as we refine more with the task force, we'll be able to send out more specific. It might not even come from us at that point. It might start coming from each school building, so they can get more detailed data, and then they'll take their data and upload it to us, central office, so we can get an idea of the big picture.
I think the clarification right now is helpful.
Yep.
Anyone out there have any questions? Dick, Emily, Lisa, Wayne? No?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. We have an update on the fiscal year 2022
Can I
budget.
ask a COVID-related question? I'm sorry. Not about the task force, but COVID-related. Are we?
Sure.
Sorry. Very quickly, I know that DESI this week, this is not related to the task force, but I know they updated their programmatic stuff.
Absolutely. So it's interesting, every time DESI does a update, they add it on to their prior releases. In this instance, this was an update to August 11th, but it involved singing, involved chorus. So what they're allowing, and Mr. Seymour's already working out with Ms. McLennan and Ms. Nato, she's the arts chair and the chorus teacher, that they are now allowed to sing. It's a 10-foot distance. You can sing indoors with a mask, 10 feet apart. Obviously, that creates space restrictions. There's not too many places you can do that, but it's a step in the right direction because we've had so many students who are enrolled in these classes, want to be in these classes, whether it's cold, so they're not going outside and they don't do that anymore. But yeah, that's at 10 feet, which is great news. I will tell you that Harry and Marcia were very, very excited. And I think the kids had to be so because it's just a huge step in the right direction. I think, again, even those guidelines will say 10 feet outside is preferred. At no time can you take a mask off and sing inside. But that was thank you for that cue.
Similar to the sports department, it's in the better than nothing category right now.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yep.
So to follow up on that, like, would that open up any theater opportunities for kids? Was there any?
So actually, so Mr. Seymour again is, as we talked about, we're up to rival. So Mr. Seymour again was working with West Newbury Board of Health, just talking about, because we normally would have the musical coming up this spring. We don't think we'll have the musical, but when he and I were talking about it, he had spoken with the arts department, and they had some ideas, and a lot of those ideas were somewhat virtual for bands, for theater, and for even for some of their art classes. And because I knew about March 22nd, to me it was, well, can we just put something together live? How nice would it be for people to be able to walk through the building and go, now they might not be able to co-mingle and go around and say, look, but to be able to go down and see it, do an art gallery exhibit where they're able to just see, and maybe the kids do videos describing what they do. But to be able to go to a play inside, again, it's a finite amount of seating, but it's far better than anything we've had. But from the student experience, for me to be able to be up on stage and go over lines and participate in that, and I think they have to get creative with, okay, what are some of the plays that we can do where we can stay, even have that distance? And of course, if they're singing, they're going to be performing with the mask. But who cares? It's, as a student, it's always about that experience. It's about being there, being a part of it, and learning your role, and just that camaraderie that comes with it. So and overall, so I know I've gotten, but it was sounded very, very positive from West Newbury that the board out there would support that, which is awesome.
Yeah, because I think it's meant a lot for the athletes to do their extracurriculars, but some of the kids who aren't involved in sports, like, haven't had that opportunity this year. So I think anything we can do to think outside the box to give them those opportunities, I think, is well worth it.
Great, thank you. Okay, Greg.
Hi.
Hi. What do you have for us on the fiscal year 22 budget?
Well, as the prelude to 2 weeks from now, when we have to send our assessments to the towns, one day late, but they'll get over it. We've been waiting for all sorts of information to come in and to finally talk to the towns a little bit. I finally got the last town I could talk to was yesterday. So last night and all day today was get it ready for you guys tonight to give you where we are and what our options will be. Luckily, the superintendent is much better at technology than I am, so he has a slideshow he's got all set up so we can go through this. If you're here, you obviously have a hard copy of this. If you're at home, there it is. The first slide is the assessment sheet. If we went with the budget that was presented in January, this would be basically the budget as presented and then given to the towns. Obviously now two-step is now in there since we now know the governor's budgets. You've been told previously how the shifts happen to the towns. This will give you more of a visual representation of what that means as we go through it. So this is the calculation. This is the sheet that's been used in the district since it was created back in the mid-2000s. It's been adjusted for certain variances that come through the years, like 2 town assessments that never happened before. But it's tried, it's true, it's mathematically vetted by all the towns, and when you get to the bottom, you'll see what the total town assessments would be. And you can see that's how much you'd be asking for the towns, including their capital, the new building, and the operating.
I'll just make one mention when we go through this, you're going to see that building project is in here, so the numbers get big.
Yes, you get a big fat because there is a second borrowing, obviously. We've only borrowed roughly a little more than half of our share of the new building. The second half of the borrowing will happen most likely around June of this year. So we don't run out of money because we're spending fast. So the second slide will show you basically that, your fiscal year 21 assessment by the towns, the fiscal year 22 assessment by the towns, the difference. Now, the difference is shocking, which is why we added the next column, which is the new debt. That's the new estimated each town's gonna have added to it for the new middle high school. So if you minus that up, you'll see what the general fund increase is by town. Obviously, you can see Groveland at the top at 782, Merrimack at 653, and West Newbury down at the bottom at $3,500. Feeling confident West Newbury can afford the $3,500. The other two towns, coming from a municipal background as well, I can tell you there is no way they could afford that. If you went down this option right here, you have two towns going to an override. And we know we need at least two towns to approve our budget. Now, if you look at the column with the people's taxes you saw last year, you've heard the superintendent alert to Merrimack's increases last year, one of, if not the highest in the state with all their stuff. That 800,000 is about to come too. So phase 2 of that increase is coming, minus a police station in Merrimack, and every other town is coming as well. So asking for an override on top of all that is a tricky proposition. And as I presented it to the towns, they were both pretty much a thing. If we're going to have an override, it'll be a total override. They're not going to say, I can afford 100,000, so I'll make my override 682. If they're going to have one, they're going to cover themselves. So it'll be total. All they have to do is give you $1 more than they gave you last year. Everything else they can put on an override. There's a risk, obviously, in doing that. If it fails, not only are you short your 629, you're short what you were going to get from them in addition to that. So just letting you know what that risk factor is as we go forward. But this is two-step. It's not advantageous. We would love to get back to per pupil where it's a nice steady growth. And every year when we do this assessment, we try it per pupil just to see if the stars align. Because once it aligns, it'll be easier to manage. But if we did that this year, Merrimack still would go up an additional 600,000. West Newbury would drop about 600,000, and Grove would stay about where it is. So obviously that's not going to happen. So we moved on with this scenario. Any questions on any of these slides? By all means, anybody has anything, questions, let them go. To get to that point now, we brought ESSER into the conversation a few weeks ago because the state said in the next grant, knowing full well that when they did Chapter 70 and used the student population from this year as opposed to what's really going to show up next year, most likely when we're open, they needed to find a way to cover some of the stuff. And instead of them using their own money, they thought they'd use federal money. So they allowed you to use a percentage on a formula of ESSER to offset any town whose net minimum spending requirement, which is the first part of two-step that throws us out of whack, could be used if the town's assessment increased. You could help offset it. West Newbury's obviously decreased, so they couldn't be participant in this. I asked you guys, the board first, the committee first of all, is this something you'd be interested in? You voted yes to send it to the towns to see if they'd be interested in it. I will tell you that all three towns responded that they put it on their agendas, voted it in favor. So now you can see if you can drop it with the ESSER numbers, and now it shows you again what the numbers are. Obviously, those two towns dropped, West Newbury stays fixed at 3557. So now it gives you an idea of what the percentage increase would be to the town. Now, this does not include the ESSER offset. I tried to do about 10 different ways. I realized I was just tying myself in knots because there are so many different ways you could do the percentage increase. I would just say if we went with the full 7 at the beginning without the ESSER drop, this would be the increase in the assessments to the towns. 15% to Merrimack and 6%, and pretty much in West Newbury, obviously that's all just the debt excluded. So pretty big, bigger than anything we've ever had passed in this district, in my memory by far.
And bigger because.
Yeah, it's a combination of those two towns getting the hit on two-step as well as the new building coming on.
146.3 million.
Yeah, we'll do a number on it. So now that we've got this done, we knew we were going to use ESSER and stuff. I talked to the towns and said, okay, if the school committee doesn't want to go to an override vote, what can we do? And again, this is the process, ESSER out the door, new building out the door, that we've used fairly successfully for the last few years.
Justin, can you go back one slide? Because I think will help with what Greg's gonna say. Well, maybe 2 slides. Yeah, that one. Because that right-hand column is what you're talking about.
Right. So that would be the increase. Obviously, in these two towns, in Merrimack, again, that's still more than their 2.5 increase that they can get. They'd be taking all their money plus. So again, that's outside their realm. So again, we sit down, we talk to them. Groveland is going through a little bit of a transition, so they have a new person filling as an interim, and he was on vacation. So I was talking to Merrimack, Carol, and she basically said what we thought. What we said in the budget book is about what she could afford, a 3% increase in what she was playing with. And I said, okay, so I tried that. And in the interim, while I was waiting, she called me back. And this is, again, part of what happens when you work together with people and, are open, transparent, and trying to do the best you can with each other. She called back and said, you can go up another 50 or 60,000 on me. I got some good news in a couple other areas. So I'm letting you know you can throw that into your mix. That's wonderful. So now I know, okay, this is what Carol can afford. It's her number. And then it's nothing more than I go to the top of that assessment sheet and I plug in a number. And I look at it, see what to do to Merrimack. Nope, still too much. Throw in another number. Again, nothing related to the budget book at all, just to get a number. And I got to the number of, page.
47.
Yeah, it'll be, no, that was, 47,375. At 47,375, you have a budget. Groveland may need an override at this point because I haven't talked to them yet. But Merrimack will have it on the town meeting floor fully funded, as will West River. Okay, so I wait for Groveland to come back. Groveland came back, and he sat down and he was fascinated by the process. He could not believe that this wasn't just being shoved down their throats. And they actually said it last night at the selectmen's meeting. They'd never seen anything like it. They're used to an adversarial relationship, and he was marveled by it. And what he said was, the number that he was throwing out that gets them a budget, we can't afford. However, I would advocate using our one-time money, some few cash, some stabilization, to get us to the point that it's not an overriding Groveland either, because they're giving up something with ESSER. And to get down to this budget cut, he showed me some of the potential things, and they'd be willing to use a little one-time money. And the selectmen all agreed with it last night. So at that number, a budget of $47,375,000, if that's the number we vote, 2 weeks from now, this will be the budget going forward. It will be presented at town meetings this way, and there will not be an override vote in any town associated with it. All that being said, I guess it comes down to what the feeling of the committee is. I don't know. I mean, you could say we want to go forward with the full budget and let them have their overrides. You could say, do it, cut it down to the 47,375 and then show us how you get there. But I think we need to know at this point the role of the committee of what it is you want us to do in the next 2 weeks. And I'll give you a preview if you say go to the 47,375 on the next slide of how we get there. It won't be total, but it'll be pretty close and there'll be some more adjustments. But I need to know that first answer. Again, not a vote, just kind of get a feeling out there.
What was our original, Greg, what was our?
It's about a $350,000 reduction.
Question?
So one comment on what Greg was just talking about, like the fact that I think the towns are going to support this budget without overrides, I think is incredibly important right now, because what happened probably about a decade ago right now is we stuck with the higher budget and it didn't go through, and we whittled it down, and it didn't go through, and we went into like June or July. You were on the other end that time. So I think we really have to think about how right now we can set up a situation where these numbers are good for the communities. But on the other side of it, Greg will probably go through it when we go through the next part of this, this is not going to hit anything that is related to staffing that is needed to keep the services that we provide, the class sizes, it will be changes because just naturally from year to year you have changes. But there's no reductions of staff by cutting and, getting rid of services like that. It's, in some cases it's because teachers retire. So new teachers would be less expensive. So there's some savings. There's some estimates that they had made that they're going to whittle back on and try to really be cognizant of. So I think, if we lower the budget and then where we're even at right now, we're pretty close without really harming anybody, without, making any big important things that are actually going to impact the education of the students, in my opinion at least.
Did you have a question, Marie?
Yeah, my question was if it's the difference of 350,000, what effect does that have on students? So it sounds like that answer is coming.
The effects will be, as said, there's been some changes since this budget book came out.
Yeah.
Some new numbers are coming in. We'll show you that in the next one. But a lot of it will be a targeted run at some of our reserve accounts, which we have, I'll be honest with you, we didn't spend a lot of money towards the end of last year when they shut everything down. Whereas where I put it, knowing someday this would come back. So when I say we're taking a little bit of money out or some cuts, if what I'm thinking doesn't come to fruition, there is a side account that can fund it. So I'll say one of the accounts, like I don't think we might need that extra 100,000. I thought we were going to need to spend transportation based upon what I'm seeing this year. Again, I don't know next year that we lose an extra route because we're not really sure what kids are coming back. Some are graduating out. It's hard in that particular area. But as you recall, a few years ago, we created a transportation reserve account. And I used last year's not having buses and transportation a lot to slide money into that when we closed out the year. So I kind of kept it aside knowing I may have to pull it back. So if everybody did come back and the transportation needed another couple runs, that money's there anyways. So it'd be things like that, you'd say.
So do we need a motion?
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of getting, I just want to hear everybody's thoughts of what you think about, again, by your questions, I mean, you heard Mrs. Redding say she'd rather see it something like this. I'm just curious if anybody else has anything to comment on it. If not, we can move on.
I think you've done an awesome job, and especially working with the towns and meeting with them and in a way that everyone's going to work together once again, I think.
Yeah, so there was one more slide then. We'll show it to you then. Oh, Emily has her hand up.
Sorry, I only see a slide.
It's fine. I was just gonna say I know you're good at what you do, but I'm amazed that you got this to where it is, because I mean, looking at where we started with this and just knowing what a lot of the other pieces are, I think it's fantastic. Not everything we would have hoped, but still amazing, given the circumstances. And I would like to see us work towards that 47,375 instead of asking people for another override and putting more financial burden on people who just supported the school district in that way for the new building.
Wayne?
Greg, pretty much all you want from us right now is to give you a feeling that the majority of the school committee is in favor of not going for overrides and to look how we get to that final determination number. So for the 9 of us to say, we agree or not agree, go for an override or not. And that's what you need the feeling on at this point. And then you'll continue and show us how you can arrive at our final destination without the override. Correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to state then right now, I'm not for an override, and I think what you will have for us will indeed demonstrate we'll have everything that we want without asking for the towns for more money.
On behalf of Groveland, no override.
Lisa? Yeah, Lisa agrees. Okay. You're on mute.
But I agree, no override for Groveland.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to keep on going then, Greg?
Let's go. So what you'll see now is the sheet you're familiar with, a little reconciliation sheet, we always say.
I love this sheet.
You love this sheet.
My finance person in me loves this sheet.
It's fairly simple, it's easy to understand, and it tells you exactly how we're going to get where we're going to go. So what you see at the top is revenue increases and decreases. Obviously, this is from the 629 we were already paying. Everything we do is based upon the original budget book and with the 629 shortfall. When the governor's budget came out in Chapter 70, we heard about this one, we took a hit. Revenue decrease. Transportation, we took a hit. Then, now we talk to the towns over what was in the budget book. Groveland will come up with that extra money. Merrimack will come up with that extra money. Westerburg will not be required to pay that money. So, okay, that's how the revenue. We don't get a lot of revenue collected, so that's our revenue. So now we have, you'll see, some cleanup. $20,000 from line 10 at the time. Basically, that was an increase to move the archives. Obviously, this building's about to be demolished in a year. I was hoping to do that this year. Most likely, it's going to be a little bit towards next year now. It's what it does to take it out. But anyways, we can hold that aside. If we did get a rush coming in and we can suddenly pull it off, there is another account we could tap money from at the time to do it. But I'd rather not. Legal services spent. When I created the budget, I wanted to go up $20,000 because we were spending more money in the spend line for legal services. I'll assume it's related to this year. I'm hoping it just becomes a new trend, but we are not spending nearly what I thought we were going to spend at the time I did the budget. He won't even spend what he got this year, most likely at the current pace. So I'm willing to drop that back down and level fund it for this year. Hardware, this is a unique one. We talked about always giving 7th graders coming in Chromebooks 1-to-1. They're going to move forward. We don't need to buy as many because when they were handing out COVID money and making everybody buy Chromebooks and stuff, we had a bunch of, we still got a bunch of them left. So I don't need to buy as many for next year. Everybody will, all 7th graders coming in will still get one. We just don't have to buy as many as we thought we were going to. So we can save $30,000 there. The next one, this is what Chris Redding alluded to. Since the budget book came out, we've had additional staff announce their retirements. This affects 2 lines, obviously, a bunch of various ones and things. But what we do is, obviously, a senior teacher retiring, we replace them with a younger teacher coming in. Salary's not as much, we save money. I believe that is 6 additional retirees that will save you that. But that also has an offset a little further down on an expense increase because now we have more sick leave buyback. But you'll see that when we get to it. Next line, column of reserve. When I created the budget book, we weren't sure exactly how things were working out, who's going to move columns and things like that in the teacher's contract. And we had been holding them up as prior contracts. We could only move one for this, and this was the first time this year it happened. I had assumed that a lot of people had built up, because it was sometimes easy to move a step than a column, that they had built up reserves, and a lot of people would be moving, and about 40% of them would. You'll see in the budget book, I use the number 40%. It's not nearly that. Now we actually see what it is. So it's a reduction in 100,000 in that line, which was basically nothing more than a holding pattern to fund those things that we aren't going to need. Not a cut, not anything. No one's losing any money that they were entitled to. It's just an alignment.
And that actually gets you to the number that of the actual teachers who will be moving the column. So it's taking an estimate and making it
more actual.
So it's not, holding anybody back.
Yeah. Sped transportation contracted services, I alluded to as an example when we were talking a little earlier. We're not spending as much as I thought. I don't think a lot of it's coming back next year, but if it does suddenly, we need another couple runs put back in, I have a reserve account to go back into it that we alluded to that we can use it for. So it's a cut, but no risk really. Custodian salary, the before and after program, we're hoping will be back. We used to always budget for one custodian out of that program. I didn't do it in the budget when I did it, partly because I wasn't sure, and partly I think because it didn't click in my head that it was there anymore because the program had stopped. So I'm going to put that back in. So that would be, it's not a cut, it's just a reallocation of a fund out of the general fund back into an account we used to use for it.
So
Next two. Oh,
okay.
sorry.
So for accounting purposes, a program like the before and after school program isn't part of the operating budget. It's a
No, it's
separate
not.
account. So that's why the revenue is sitting over here. So now he can match an expense with the revenue sitting over there. So that's why it's coming out of operating. If anybody cares.
329 and 330, the facilities department doesn't know about this yet. When they see it, they might not like it. Basically what this is cutting by about half the repair budgets for the middle school and high school. How much do we really want to repair a building that's going to be a pile of rubble? No, normally they would make the argument that if a bathroom breaks, you still have to fix the bathroom. But I'm at this point with 1 year left. If a bathroom died, I'd wall it off. I don't think we'd spend a bunch of money tearing down walls to fix the plumbing.
I think when we talked about this, we realized that there are going to be some things that will, when the air system goes, you have to fix that. So that's kind of the money we set aside for those, not quite catastrophic, but things that are absolutely necessary in order to keep children coming to school, in order to keep employees in an environment that's healthy and safe.
Yeah,
A lot of other things like tiles popping up and stuff, we won't be replacing those anymore.
Unless it's expensive.
Yeah.
Could you
So-
reassure people you won't be demolishing it with the kids still in it? That's probably it.
So, here's the increase I talked about. Obviously, we have more teachers retiring than we originally budgeted for, so we will increase the sick leave buyback. Here was a great surprise. The Essex County Regional Retirement Board. I'm obviously not an actuary. I couldn't read the tables, but they must have had one heck of a year in the stock market. Because normally, that's actually less than we paid this year, to bring it down to that number. Normally, the budget's up 8, 9, 10%, depending, because they're trying to get themselves fully funded by 2035, so this number isn't in the budget anymore. But that was just a great number to come out when it finally came out. So that saved us $168,000, obviously, really good news. The next two, waiting on the GIC still. Usually they have a meeting at the end of February and vote their rates. Sometimes in the last few years, we've actually, because I budget 5%, and they've come in at 3%, so it's a little bit of a savings. I'm assuming I can't anymore know what's going to happen with the GIC. They're running late, their meetings are running late. Also, I can't tell you what the hospital situation's like now. I don't know if they've saved a ton of money by not having all people go into the doctors, or if they cost them a bunch of money because of COVID. I have no clue. So I'm leaving those two numbers there. Hopefully by our next meeting, I'll have something to fill in there for them. School choice expense. This is a governor's budget for the cherry sheet. Same thing with charter expense. And last but not least, tuition private school. That $100,000 would come out of circuit breaker. Again, another account that has been, because of our special ed costs that have been, shall we say, increasing at a fairly dramatic rate over the last few years. When last year happened, we set aside the maximum amount in the circuit breaker revolving account. Normally, we take about 1.2, 1.3 million out of it. I've just proposed taking 1.4 million out of it. And if nothing changes, it still leaves us a balance in excess of $1 million in the account in case anything bad happens. So if you take all those adjustments off our original 629 with pluses and minuses, we'd still need to reduce 76,000 to get to that 47,375 number we talked about sending to the towns. I'm hoping the GIC will make those up. If not, we don't know that by the time frame next Tuesday. I would just allude to additional amounts from a revolving account, like whether it be circuit breaker or the transportation one or something like that, until the time frame we know GIC does.
I would just point out as well with GIC, I think it was last year in this NAP, we heard a big roar coming out of our space. GIC was much higher than what we had budgeted for, so it can go both ways. And I think what you said, Greg, is absolutely correct. It's really hard to know with what they call, I was going to say alternative surgeries, but the surgeries that aren't required, but elective, with elective surgeries and things like that not taking place. It's hard to say if it's going to have a plus or a negative on it, but that could change that number one way or the other, or keep it right where it is. But it could go both ways. I thought you spoke very rosy about it. That makes me feel good. But I've also in my office heard you.
Yeah. Said nobody ever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concrete walls between us.
So this is where we are. I appreciate your feedback on how you wanted to proceed, at least override, non-override wise. I'll take your comments on anything that we're proposing to get to that number right now, or any questions you may have, or things you don't like, or you'd like to see us go in a different direction. If not, I'll wait for the GIC numbers or make the adjustment if we have to see that, and we'll do. So if anybody has any questions on the budget or what we just showed you, have at it.
Fabulous job, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good job. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you again, Greg. Awesome job. Now, I would like to open up the public hearing for the fiscal year 2022 budget. We requested that people, the budgets have been in the libraries and the town hall, or not in the town halls, but
They've been there. I don't know if we can get in and see them, but.
And we asked people to send in questions about the budget and that we would answer them. But at this time, no one sent in any questions.
And they're on the website, so.
They're on the website. They were shared on Facebook twice when it
Yeah,
first came out.
I mean, we put it out, for people to send us. Yep, and it came out in for the campus, but no one contacted us about the public hearing, so I guess I can adjourn the public hearing or close the public hearing because we did not get any questions. So. Okay, and that is all we have for tonight. Yep.
We want to talk about, sorry, it's completely out of order. We want to talk about the numbers. If I could just try to go back to the superintendent's news real quick.
Oh, the DNA?
I think it's important, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just important. Last meeting, we had this conversation about before school. As of today, Greg, you want to talk about,
sure.
You had a conversation today, get an update on the numbers and where the children are coming from.
Yes. So as we did we sent out Mary Ann sent out a nice blast to all the elementary school families saying that we wanted to do this program again. We understand that parents have asked for it, and we need to know if, we started up again, were you interested in coming back? Obviously, we had someone on public comment mention that this is very important to them. At the end of the time frame to get a plan, we had 8 families district-wide covering 11 students who wanted to come back. It's split basically 4 children in Merrimack, 4 in Groveland, 3 in West Newburgh. Obviously, if we started this program, it would be a massive money loser because you have to have 2 people there to watch 2 children. And again, these people at this point, because we haven't done it in full time, would only be there on their cohort days. So we're kind of at a crossroads. I know these people really, really need it, but at the same time, So, I mean, when we do come back, I'm sure, and open up the before and after, even if we opened up the after, I don't think it would garner much more support than the 11 we've already got.
So is your suggestion, because I think when we talked about this last time, we were targeting next Monday is a possible start.
Well, the
Is your recommendation that we're gonna-
program director recommends we don't start it. I know that's hard for some people. I mean, they were really counting on this. But I can't see a way that we opened it up and just started
Unless they're gonna
charging
go up
people,
and-
$500 a week to watch a kid for an hour to make just
Can
break
you put some
even.
context into when you talk about how much money we're talking about in terms of the loss for the district?
Well, the people pay, I didn't bring that with me, obviously, I'm sorry. They pay, if it's like 2 days a week, they pay like $65 or $85 a month. And if we have people there, it'd be about $60 an hour for the two, not $60 a day for the two people to be there for the 2 hours. They get like $15 an hour. So we'd be paying $65 a month and paying out $280 a week. Times 3 kids, it'd be $180. So you'd be losing you're losing about somewhere between $400 and $500 a month per school. Not a horrible deal. But again, and then of course the program director comes back too, so that'd be on top of it too. It's just, I wish it was more, just a few more to make it seem justifiable to have 2 people watching 2 children.
Or if we can consolidate, but that's part of the problem.
That's
There is no way to say, like, the ideal
All in
thing
one
would be,
school.
hey, we're gonna have all 11 students in this one building, but there's no way to get them to go from this building to another building. And you actually have to have, like Greg said, there's 2 people, 2 students, you have to have 2 students.
It starts before all the teachers and administrators are there. And obviously you can't, the custodian opens the building an hour before. So if someone calls in sick, you have to have someone there, so you need a couple people.
Is there a substantial change if we have a K-6 in-person return 5 days in how we think about this? Or how the district?
Yeah, I mean, I think so my thought on this is that I believe that the director is going to very much want to get out there and get as many students in as possible. And if there is an increase even with the students who are adding now, I think that's going to put parents in a different situation. If I was preparing for just Tuesday and Thursday, and all of a sudden my students had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I wasn't prepped for those other 2 days. I might need to take advantage of that. So I think it's just a matter of, it's been out there. I know I was trying to find an email that was on campus. But I think if we can get the numbers increased to the point where it's at least a break even, it'd be nice to be able to do.
I think a lot of it's that this time of the year, a lot of the parents have already taken care of this. They've made their arrangements.
Emily, you had a question, and then Chris Redding.
So the cohort question, do you know if they're in the same cohorts or separate cohorts? Because that could mean that it's only run 2 days a week.
Actually, there was one child in each of the 3 buildings that needed it 4 days a week.
I was just thinking that might.
It's a good question, and I thought of it too. When I saw that one child is there 4 days a week in each of the schools that wanted it, I was like, okay, of course.
Chris?
Well, there are 2 things. One, to follow up on Emily's, is there a way that, the parents right now don't have anything. So just those 2 days, would that help out enough families to make it running in just those 2 days? I don't know. Just to be creative, because I do believe that there's parents who have to show up at work and really have a hard time with that. My other comment is, I think there's an awful, I've driven into Boston a couple times recently, nobody's commuting into work anymore. So I think that that's a big reason that some families don't need it, because somebody's working from home. So even though you might not be engaging with your children, you're physically in the house, so they're safe until the bus comes. I think that might be one of the reasons. And it actually makes me question next year, this isn't changing. My husband is home for the next year. He knows that right now already. They're not bringing people back. Well, he travels anyways, but. So I think, this could be a change. And have we ever tried to work way back when I taught in district? I feel like the Y ran the after school program, so it wasn't actually a function of the school. And I think like Newburyport, the Y runs, like they do it physically at the location. So is it something that, you know, is there any way that we can, you know, reach out to anybody in the community to help these students somehow? I don't know, like local preschools that, or, you know, something, so we can help problem solve for these families.
Emily?
So I couldn't totally hear, Dr. B, what you said, but about when kids go back 5 days or even full-time 4 days, this will potentially change that, right? Because I mean, I think to Chris's point, yes, a lot of people are working from home, but there are plenty of people who, with next year coming, who have jobs that can be a little bit flexible, have made changes or have switched shifts or whatever. And that if there was an option for them at the beginning of the year, would take that option so that they could, you know, go back to their regular life. But I think if we are talking about making changes to the schedule, that would also likely create an increased need.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just couldn't.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said. I mean, people have adapted, but if all of a sudden if my children are now going 4 days instead of 2, they go, that changes things. Because I was working on the days that they were going to school, and now they're going to school more. So I might need to make some bring them in so I can get to work by 4. I can go to work all 4 days now instead of just assignments at home. But I think for my overall point is, if you're watching this, if you're interested, give me just a reminder that it's available. And I think my recommendation is that we just don't completely close the door on it. Although when you get employees who you need to help supervise, they're going to want to know a start date. Like, they need to know when can they be there that time in the morning. So I don't see this starting March 8th unless there's a flood that comes in. But that doesn't mean it might not start March 15th, 22nd, or whenever we get that. And when it does happen, I just want everyone to know, like, we'll pump out information that says, yep, hey, we can get going. And if there is a big change that happens where everyone's coming back, then yes, I think I would suspect it would be a very viable option.
So I'll keep on top of it. I'll keep talking with the program director and see if we can figure out whatever we can, but it just doesn't make a lot. I'm not even worried about the financial part of it as much. It just doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. Like I said, assuming as the school opens up more and more, there'll be more and more need for it. Obviously, we're preparing for it, so when it can happen, it'll happen as quickly as possible. So.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Well, thank you.
We will keep us posted.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys basically said, you could do the before program, and when the after program became viable, you could start that too. So it's not like I need the school committee to do anything. I know we all wanted to get up and running again. It'll just be when it becomes feasible, we'll get it going.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to
Move adjournment.
Second.
Roll call, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanne, Emily, Marie,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Chris, Megan, Lisa,
Yes.
Redding.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Well,
Silly.